Welcome to it, sports fans. It is the 13th. Jeepers. How time flies. The 13th of August. In the year of the COVID. What a wild time to be alive. What an extremely wild time to be alive. Tonight, by the way, James Dalton joins us. Of course, another special edition of the Skip Pass. Really looking forward to that. Last night, Neymar. Some saying, wow, he has finally woken up. He has risen from under the rock. And finally, the $200 million price tag, £200 million price tag is starting to pay off. Let's get into that. We'll have a look, see exactly how good he's been. It's been a while now. It's been 3 seasons. Looking forward to chatting about that. I'm not alone today, of course, for the Skip Pass. As always, Woude Muller. Woude, what's happening?
Same as every day these days. But I'm good and I'm happy to be here. And it's always nice to have James on the show as a guest. So, yeah, can't complain.
Yeah.
Guess not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah. It's a tough time to be alive right now.
Yeah, I've got a buddy there in the background who looks very comfortable. Passed out and very comfortable. But, yeah. That seems to have been doing what he's been doing the whole day. So, doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, cats.
What a life.
Yeah. Cat, domestic cat. Wow. Yeah. Cats, I don't know. Cats in Formula One. Unbelievably boring. I don't know what to say.
I think we just have to prove my life is just really, really boring.
I don't want to say that. I'm trying to take a positive direction, and if I do say and cast my sort of insecurities by saying having a cat, 2 cats now at 30 and living alone you're not going a good direction. But I'm not going to say that. That's not what I'm saying. I could have gone that direction, but I'm not.
No, we're not going to go down that. Yeah.
No,
exactly.
No, let's stay positive.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is good times. Champions League's back. Rugby looks like it's coming back in the UK. So we got plenty to talk about tonight. Looking forward to having you and James on.
In the UK, but we're probably not going to have games in New Zealand or as many games in New Zealand as we want. So the exciting games are gone.
Okay, well, there we go, folks. Stick around. That's a good old tease from the old days of radio and television. That's called a tease, Woude, huh? So we'll talk about that a little bit. What's Jacinda going to do? She was kind of seen as the mother of all dragons, and now the dragons have gone somewhere else to play, and she needs new dragons, maybe, which is not a good analogy because dragons aren't real. COVID is real.
Did you watch Game of Thrones by any chance? Is that why you're going down this road?
Did I watch Game of Thrones? Unbelievable. That's you know what? Let's start the show. That's a ridiculous question. Did I watch Game of Thrones?
I
Disrespectful. All right, Woude. That's get Woude out of shot. Let's get going. I mean, didn't watch Game of Thrones. These are the types of people that are holding this world back. If you didn't watch Game of Thrones, I want to make it clear right now, you are meaningless to me, and that's why Woude is out of shot. We got to mute her, and she is dead to us until she fixes that. You know what? We might not even do the Skip Pass tonight. After I didn't know Woude hadn't seen Game of Thrones. So, yeah, that was wow. That should have been on your application sheet. I'm pretty sure that was a question actually upon applying for the job. So I think Woude might have lied in that. But anyway, Game of Thrones, greatest show ever. Actually, the greatest show on earth is the English Premier League. Game of Thrones, the second one. Anyway, let's get into it. Last night, PSG did their thing. Great game. Listen, that Atalanta team, you know what's awful is they won't be able to keep the team together because just the way Italian finances are structured is they'll lose 2 or 3, but they are unbelievable. Unbelievable. If you didn't watch that game last night, it's actually worth watching all 90 minutes. It's worth watching all 90 minutes. I thought Atalanta were unbelievable for the first 60 minutes. And then it was just too much. The Italian teams have just come off the most brutal schedule of everyone, right? They've had to make up the whole season, and they've literally just finished. But Atalanta, quite brilliant. And that playing style. Gasparini's got them playing phenomenal stuff. But last night, some say Neymar came to the fore. And I actually saw something from somebody I really, really respect on Twitter. And they're saying that it's Neymar and Messi now. And I thought, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I like, what? But I get this, right? It's almost, we live in a world where the new person's always the best one, right? Is news always better? New car, new wife, new husband, it's better. That's not always true. It's not always true. I mean, it's always the easier one to excuse, right? But no. And I want to have a look at Neymar Jr.'s numbers, because how good is this guy? You know, I know, I get the hype. I love it. I love hype. But unfortunately, I have this bias to numbers and what's really happening. What's actually happening with Neymar Jr.? Because what I want to tell you, and I want to show you what major titles Neymar has won since he left Barcelona and Leo Messi. For our podcast audience, there we go. Those are the major titles Neymar Jr. has won since leaving Barcelona. Now, here's the thing. I don't grade on a curve. I don't want to hear about his excuses. And once again, don't tell me about injuries. I don't want to hear about your injuries, because part of the deal of being the guy, Leo Messi, being Cristiano Ronaldo, Pele, right? Eden Hazard, Arjen Robben, Frank Ribery, is don't get injured. I don't want to hear about your injuries and your excuses, right? Availability is the greatest ability. If you want to be the guy, be available. Be there. You think Leo Messi is always in shape? No way. Cristiano Ronaldo's not always in the best shape. He's, you ask any sportsman, and we can ask James a little bit later. He was a rugby player, so it's real for them. No sportsman is ever 100%. No sportsman is ever 100%. I don't care what level you're at. They're all always carrying brutal knots, tight hamstrings, back. There's always something wrong with the very best. Now, I'm not saying Neymar's soft. Oh, my goodness, but he's been injured a lot. He still hasn't finished a whole season at PSG, by the way. He still has not finished. And after last night's performance, I'm even more convinced that he's actually the second guy, because without Mbappe, that wasn't it. Against Atalanta, the way they were celebrating, by the way, beating Atalanta, it should be embarrassing. Neymar should be putting them away. I mean, how many chances do you need? If you want to be the guy, no excuses. I'm sorry, no excuses. I never heard Richie McCaw make an excuse when they lost to France. He came back and won 2 World Cups. I've never heard Ricky Ponting make mistakes. 3 World Cups in a row. Hey, I tell you what, I'm going to pitch up World Cup final. I'm going to hit everyone for 6 at the Wanderers and win it. I don't want to hear excuses, because if you want to be great, you don't get excuses. There's no way out. There's no excuses if you want to be the guy. Michael Jordan, no excuses. LeBron James, no excuses. George Kittle just got the bag. No excuses. He's tight end in football. Tom Brady, no excuses. I'm going to go to 9 Super Bowls, win 6. No excuses, ever. Neymar is looking for every excuse in the world. He hasn't won a major title since leaving Barcelona. Now, let me tell you, I don't consider anything in France a major title for PSG. They outspent everybody by 2 billion euros. It's the Qatari owners. I mean, come on. There's no league there. So really, it's been a cakewalk in Champions League, and he has failed over and over again. I'm tired of the injury excuses. He's failed with Brazil, injured again, injured both 2 World Cups in a row. Listen, let me show you when you're the guy what happens. So everybody said, since Neymar has been gone, Leo Messi will crumble. Since Xavi's been gone, Leo Messi will crumble. Since Iniesta's been gone, Leo Messi will crumble. Well, this is what Messi's done on his own. He had Iniesta for a season, but 3 La Ligas without Neymar, 3 Copa del Reys without Neymar. And here's the one. Is you're the best player in the world twice without Neymar. I'm just telling you what's happening. That's not what I want. That's what's happening. And then to show you even more, when the guy, he's won top goal scorer 4 times since Neymar's been gone. So this is what happens when you're the guy. I don't want to hear last night about beating Atalanta in a quarterfinal and all of a sudden he's the best player in the world. And it's still debatable to me, because once Mbappe came on, then the cutting edge came, and that's how they won, right? Really. Is Mbappe changed everything. So for me, I'd still take Eden Hazard, because Eden has taken Chelsea to Premier League titles. He took them to the victory in Baku. What has Neymar done on his own. He has failed miserably with Brazil. I'm sorry. That's in a shambles. And it's not a talent issue. I mean, look at that Brazil team. Jesus, him, prime David Luiz, prime Thiago Silva, prime Dan Alves, prime Santos. It's been a prime Oscar. I mean, do I need prime Willian, prime Douglas Costa? So it's not a talent issue. Please don't give me that. Prime Casemiro. Do I need to go on? He was part of the Lucio era as well on the back end of that. Thiago Silva, Lucio, David Luiz. I mean, goodness sake. Alexander. And he still has been able to deliver. Come now. When we talk about the guy, we talk about Ronaldinho. He delivered when it was just basically him, Ronaldo, and Rivaldo. Basically them, those three, and then Cafu was on the back end, and Roberto Carlos and these guys were done. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear Messi the guy. Now he wins the Champions League, different story. I'm really looking forward to see, because now the pressure's on. And I hope they get Barcelona in the semi, because then we get to see, he gets his chance to say, I wanted to leave and have my own thing. All right, when you're the guy now, there's no excuses. There's no putting the ball to Suarez or Messi. Now you're the guy. Let's deliver. He's going to get Munich. He's going to get Barcelona. He's going to get Man City. Now he has his chance. Because we saw what, hey, ask James Milner what happens when you come up against Leo Messi. I'm sorry, I'm not in on Neymar. He's not top 3 for. Stop with the hype. He's done nothing to be in the top echelon. He's not Pantheon. Stop with the sales hype. Him and Pogba are not top 5 for me. Give me results. Stop giving me the flash. Stop giving me the flash. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't won a title since leaving Barcelona. That matters. He hasn't even challenged in Europe. With Mbappe. With Di Maria. With Thiago Silva at his prime. With Dani Alves. With Marco Verratti. These are all bona fide world-class guys. He's got no excuse there. He's got no excuse. I would say Leo Messi has actually had a worse team since he left. So don't give me an Neymar. I'm sorry, I'm out. Don't give me that. I understand. We like the shiny things, flashy things. The new one's always better. Yes, he's Joga Benito. He is Brazilian football. It's too much. With no substance. Too much with no substance. So for me, I'd love to know what people think, but I'm out on Neymar. Forget that one. Forget that one. Hey, if you are looking for substance, we got a really special edition there once again. James has been kind enough to come and join us again. Really looking forward to what he thinks. Of course, the rugby season at an interesting phase internationally. It's all happening across the Atlantic and here. Let's hear what the guys have to say. Woude is joined by James Dalton in the skip pass. Over to you, Woude.
Yeah, I'm actually really, really sad that we're coming to the end of the 10-week Super Rugby Aotearoa competition, because to me, it was such a brilliant competition. I loved it. It was such quality rugby to watch. And it just, again, showed us that New Zealand was just on another level. And now we were really looking forward to the match between the Blues and the Crusaders on Sunday, even though it wouldn't have changed the winning team or the winner of the tournament. It does have an impact on the second place. So I wonder how they're going to deal with that, because the Hurricanes are at this stage 1 point behind the Blues. And if that match does not happen on Sunday, I wonder how they're going to deal with that. So at this stage, as it stands, it's off. But I don't know if they're looking to move it somewhere else or to, don't know. But that's such a pity, because I really think that would have been a very, very good game to finish off a very, very good tournament. But because it was such a good tournament, I have James with me today, and we're going to look at the 5 talking points that we want to discuss around Super Rugby Aotearoa. So James, hi, welcome. Thank you again for being with us today.
Good evening, and it's only a pleasure. How are you doing?
I'm great. But James, before I start, I just want to know, do you know who was your captain and number 6 flank in the 1995 World Cup winning team?
Woude, do you really have to and want to embarrass me?
Yes, I do.
So yes, the honest truth, okay? Woude and I were sitting having coffee, and we were chatting about the best open and blindside flankers that have played in the World Cup. And I actually forgot that Francois Pienaar was our number 6 as our captain who raised the World Cup. So I think it maybe him raising the World Cup made him more famous than him actually playing in the final.
I mean, that's right. Well, firstly, you didn't know that Ruben Quer was your 7th flank, and when I said it was him, you didn't know.
Well, I got it wrong because Ruben was always number 6. He was always an open side fetcher. That was his dominant position. So yeah, it was very embarrassing, you know. I must be honest.
It was, but I think it's something that you will never forget again.
But let's be honest, you also forgot.
I did, and I admitted it last night, and I was very embarrassed.
So let's make it a 60-40 in my favor.
I was 8 years old when you played in the World Cup final, and I didn't play in the World Cup final with Francois Pienaar, so let's just leave that there.
Absolute
But as we said, the Super Rugby competition at Aotearoa is unfortunately coming to an end. I know you don't like the Australian competition, so you didn't really watch any of those games. But if we just look at 5 of the talking points and the things that stood out for me or for us that we discussed, I think definitely, Dave, if you can bring up that list for us. So we're just going to look at the fact that there are so many injuries, and when you play a 10-week competition at high level rugby every single time and every single weekend, you're going to have an injury list that's going to get longer and longer and longer. 2, we're going to have a look at the law regulations and then the impact of these law regulations on the game, and then just also how it changes the defensive structures and that very how it's going to change that. And then James and I are both going to pick our 3 top players, non-All Black capped players that stood out for us in this competition. So let's start with the injury thing. James, I think you know what it's like to play hard test match level rugby, but this is an injury list of in 10 weeks of how many players got injured. Yes, some of them managed to come back, so it wasn't long-term injuries. Others have been out for an entire season. And I mean, that is quite a list of injuries that's been building up throughout this competition. So you have a near test level 10-week competition, and eventually it is going to take a toll. So, I mean, as far as I understand, you still saw the Tuesday or Wednesday from the previous weekend's matches, and then you have to be ready for another hard match on the coming Sunday. So, and this is also, I think, causing a concern for international tests that are now coming up, because some of these players are long-term injuries.
Look, you've got to understand one thing. If you ask South African rugby players who are the toughest opponents to play against, they will always certainly say it's the All Blacks. So if you look at the brutality in the last 8 weeks in the competition, it speaks volumes. Hence that massive injury list. It's high impact, it's high intensity, and absolute brutality. I mean, if you just look at the size of the players at the moment, if you look at the, you know, if you look at how many times they're carrying the ball, how many times their running meters, and I'll go through some of that just now with you. It explains why the competition is so brutal, and probably why the injury list is as big as it is.
Yeah, but then also, but would this then not make sense? So New Zealand obviously wants to change the entire Super Rugby kind of set up for next year and the whole structure for next year, and they want to have this kind of playing against difficult teams and quality teams all the time. But do you think after seeing this and after all these injuries, and especially a lot of their All Black players that got injured, do you think they would want to change the format now and maybe do include the Australian teams or some of the Pacific Islander teams into the competition so that they can have kind of an easier game at least one weekend and be able to do a bit more of a rotation with their players?
Look, that's where squad depth comes in. So it's always very important that in any team you have enough depth to cover up for injuries. But unfortunately, New Zealand is a country with a very small population, so that is not always realistic. And I think that is the case for a lot of teams. If you look at the quality of the competition, why would they want to change it? I mean, if you look at the attendances at the games compared to when you had the South African teams competing and the Australian teams competing, the stadiums were empty. Now you look at the spectators are now getting value for money. They've seen big hits. They've seen tries scored. They've seen players running with the ball. They see line breaks. They've seen what they've come to watch. And that is what Super Rugby has lacked for a very, very long time. So I'm quite pro and in favour of the format changing because I think it was becoming a bit boring.
No, I agree that it's becoming a bit boring, but remember, this is also, we didn't have any sport for a long time. So you can't say it's just because of the format and the way that they've been playing now that brought people back. People didn't have anything else to do. And for a long time, they didn't have any sport. So we would need to see first what's going to happen next year, or to see really, is it because it's quality rugby that's just bringing this back, or was it just because of the scarcity? So we can't, really judge on that right now.
Well, look, I think after 9 weeks, I'm sure you would have seen a decline after 3 or 4 weeks. But
there has been a decline. It went down from 100%. It actually went down to about 70% capacity at some of the games.
Well, Woude, that's a hell of a lot more than
but the stadiums are also a lot smaller than what we have. No, I agree, and I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, but it is smaller. There was a scarcity. People are not necessarily working as much at this moment, so they do have the time to be able to go to the games. And again, it was quality rugby. I'm not taking that away. But what I also do want to ask you is, from a preparation point of view, so obviously New Zealand did really well to kind of push to get rugby back and get kind of rid of the virus and stop the virus spreading. So the New Zealand protocol was a 5-week return to play protocol. And that is really not enough. If you think about what you did to get ready for test matches, and maybe not in your time, but now lately, even I think South Africa is thinking of a 7-week return to play, which is also not enough for return to play. So that also has an impact on that. So what can you tell us about how you need to prepare to be able to play and take that impact and make sure that you're game ready?
Well, look, on that point, it would then explain why there are so many injuries on that injury list that was put on the screen earlier on. So clearly the body
of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So clearly the body does need to become not familiar, but used to that brutality and that contact, and your body at certain ages, your body does take longer to recover. However, the sport has also become a lot more scientific, which allows the players to be bigger, stronger, faster. I wouldn't say smarter, but certainly.
No, it wasn't a problem in your day either.
Look, we never did IQ tests, so we wouldn't know. So let's pass on that one. Because I would have landed up number 1.
But don't you think there were also just maybe like too few teams? So do you think it will be better to add more teams so that there's a longer break between, so say maybe instead of just having 1 bye week, you might have 2 bye weeks. So then there would be better recovery of injuries if someone did get injured. It may not be a serious injury if they just got a niggle, and there would be time for the bodies to recover. So if you do add the Pacific Islanders, for instance, or if you do add some of the Australian teams or whoever you want to add, don't you think that would maybe be a better option then, from the injury point of view?
Look, again, it would depend on the squad depth, okay, of how many of your top players you able to rest, because at the end of the day, you play to win. You play to win the competition. Okay?
Exactly. You only have 8 games that you can win.
Yeah, but the
so
point
you want to play
is,
your best players every single time, but now they get injured.
Well, you know what? That is rugby. I played every single weekend because I was number one. So I played every single weekend. So there was no rotation. And yes, we might have played less games. I mean, we went from Super 10 to Super 12 to Super 14 and now to the current format. We only played maybe 6 test matches a year. So yes, there was way less rugby. And obviously more time for us to recover. But the recovery period was equal, you know, from one Saturday to another Saturday. But yes, I think that playing not teams of lesser quality, but it would certainly allow you to rotate players that have small needles and hematomas, those that like, you know, bleeding of a leg or a calf or whatever through bruising. But also, you know, I don't know if bringing more teams in, when you say bringing more teams in, the quality of those teams, are they going to add value to the competition? You know, you've also got to bear in mind when you start looking at sponsorships, they want numbers to be viewing these games. They want to see the best players on the field so that they can maximize the return on the investment.
But you also need to do development of second-tier nations. So it is a perfect opportunity now to start focusing on these things. And you're still going to get pretty good quality rugby. A lot of the Fijians are playing in New Zealand at the moment. If they just had the opportunity to earn some money in Fiji, that would also be good quality rugby. It's also big players. It's also, so that wouldn't necessarily change the quality. It would just be different people and new people that are up and coming and rising through the ranks, as we saw with a lot of youngsters that came through now. So, yeah, it is very interesting. The list is very long. I think the New Zealand is very lucky that they don't have tests coming very soon, because they wouldn't have been able to have a very fit and strong, the strongest team on the field if they did have internationals now. And I think this kind of proved to me that you need to have a better idea of the competition that you're going into, because you also have to play internationals. They're not going to have this luxury to only play the local games forever. So I think they just need to focus on that. But then the new regulations, we mentioned that and we've spoken about that. And Dave, if you can just bring that up for me and we can just quickly have a look. So New Zealand has tried a whole new regulations, breakdown regulations in their competition. So the competitive forwarding ball carrier will be allowed only one dynamic movement after being tackled. So, you know, a lot of those players were like kind of crawling a few meters forward. That's not allowed anymore. Like I said, crawling or any secondary movement other than placing or passing will be penalized. Tacklers will be expected to roll away immediately in the direction of the touchline. This will be a referee's number one priority at the tackle, and there will be extra focus on the offside line, with defenders expected to be clearly onside to provide attacking teams more space. Now, if we look at the first few games of Super Rugby, we had, 30 penalties in the one game, 26 in the other one. There was so many penalties.
Yeah, I think the first 2 or even 3 weeks, Woude, the average penalty count was in the 30s. You're quite right. Yeah. So certainly the law changes were very difficult for a lot of the players to adapt to. And how do they say, old habits die hard? So I think that was the difficulty for the players initially, but as they progressed, they became better and better at implementation and the accommodation of the new laws.
But I mean, these are not new laws. These laws were also still there when you were playing. It was just the regulation and the refereeing around them that changed. They actually just
not at all. Not at all. These are
not new rules, James. These rules have been in the rule book for
amendments.
years.
What I mean, these are amendments.
This is not an amendment. No, this is literally just the way that the referees have not been refereeing the offside rule. You've never been allowed to be offside.
Okay, we're talking about rolling towards it. We're talking about rolling towards the touchline.
You are always supposed to run away.
How the hell do you roll towards the touchline if
You were always
line
supposed to roll
parallel to
away
the play.
immediately. It's not
Yeah.
different. It's just an easier way for them to roll away. If you rolled away backwards, they weren't going to penalize you because you didn't roll to the side. It was just that the tackler needed to roll away immediately to not affect play, to not slow down that ball. This is not new stuff. It's just the implementation of them and the way that the referees looked at it.
Or interpretation of them. But do you want to watch rugby where you giving away 30 penalties a game, where the game is stop, start, stop, start?
Well, did it? What was the impact of these regulations on the game? Because to me, what I saw is that the games were a lot faster.
Well, I think the games were a lot faster because of the style of play. In other words, if you have a look at the scrums, the guys were using the scrum as an attacking platform more than a platform to dominate from. If you look at the lineouts, the guys were doing the 6-1 where they would have 6 forwards in. They'd have a forward at scrum half. They'd move the scrum half out wide and let the fly half play in the pocket. So it was just that the style of play changed more than anything else, where they worked around the law implementation.
Yeah, but you had to figure out new ways to do that. But also, carry on.
No, go. Ladies first.
No, so just like I was saying, for me, yes, there were a lot of penalties, but the impact of this was it was making the game a lot faster. There weren't unnecessary people going into a ruck or into a breakdown to compete for that. If they knew they couldn't necessarily compete for the ball in the ruck, they rather stayed away. So a lot of the times there were no contesting at the breakdown, which made it easier for it to speed up. Especially the Crusaders, I think in the first few matches that they played, they actually didn't contest at the racks because they realized they're giving away a lot of penalties there. So that sped up the game a lot quicker, and the game came out of the breakdown a lot more and went into the back line, and it sped it up.
I'm very sorry. I'm not going to shoot you down and say that you incorrect, but I think what made the game quicker was the fact that the players got behind the tackler, behind the advantage line, where it was easier to clean over the ball, and it was easier for the scrum half to pick up a ball and distribute it. I don't think it necessarily had to do that your interpretation of less numbers at the breakdown, because in my opinion, what I've seen is there's more numbers at the breakdown to secure that ball, because the fetcher now is the tackler, and the first player there is attacking the ball and trying to create the turnover. So if you're not sending enough numbers in there, you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that advantage at the breakdown. And we saw that
they didn't necessarily contest. So the defending team, the team without the ball, didn't necessarily contest at the breakdown every time because they got penalized for not rolling away or for not staying on their feet. So a lot of times so the attacking team could get the ball out a lot easier and a lot quicker. So there was more movement and less stopping. So once they started figuring this out, and because they gave away so many penalties, they started contesting less at the breakdown. So that's what I saw, especially Crusaders. It's one thing that I picked up from them. When they gave away, I think, 14 penalties in the first match that they played, the next match it was a lot less, or even just in the second half. They didn't contest at the breakdown at all because they didn't want to give away those penalties. So that's for me. But one thing that I also picked up is that the referees, there were a lot of inconsistencies in the referees with the new law regulations, and that is a big impact on it. I felt like a lot of the referees didn't exactly know which way the ball was supposed to go and which way the penalty was supposed to go. And if they couldn't figure it out in only a five-team, 10-week competition, how's the rest of the world going to figure this out? Now we're starting playing in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Premiership, and I don't know if the referees there will be able to implement it the way that it's going to be implemented now, or it was implemented now. So that will be an interesting thing for me to look at when this starts. Not that I would probably be watching all of the games, but yeah, refereeing.
Look. Interesting enough, in the first round of the competition, there were in excess of 62 penalties. So if you look at the implementation and the governance where the referees are now trying to be more strict and more accurate on the interpretation of the laws. Is it going to make the game more attractive, sexier? Is it going to make it faster? Is it going to make it safer? Because also you've got to remember there are a couple of factors apart from just playing the game. It's got to be entertainment value for the spectator going to watch a game. You don't want to watch games where the game is totally governed and overruled by laws and governance and penalties the whole time.
But that's what I'm saying. There's very big inconsistency between the referees, and this wasn't even in a lot of games. So if you bring in more games now, if you even look at sevens or in anything, the referees get together with the Tuesday, Wednesday before the games, and they say, these are the things that we're looking at. It's almost like the referees can only focus on 2 things at a time, because you as a player and your management, if they actually just look to what the referees are doing, you could actually get around what the referees are going to referee that weekend. Because if they were doing this a certain weekend, they might be looking at something else the next weekend. So you can keep pushing those boundaries because they can't focus on all of those things. So rather make all these law things less so they can at least referee it properly.
Well, look, we all know that all men can only focus on one thing at a time. But
true story.
But in saying that, and I have to bring this up. If you look at Richie McCaw, okay, or you look at a Sean Fitzpatrick, they always played on that border, on that offside line, or on the line of actually already being offsides, and they pushed it until they got caught, and then they backed off. And that is the difference with us, is how do you interpret the law to a point where it can actually benefit you as opposed to hindering you? Mm-hmm. And that is very, very important. So you've got to utilize the law in such a way where you actually gain value and benefit from it and actually manipulate it so that you are successful. Because you see, we as South Africans get coached if you give away too many penalties. Okay, I know let's be relative now. But we coach, if you give away penalties, you will get dropped, you won't play the next game. Richie McCaw gave away boatloads of penalties because he was always on that verge of offside. And 8 times out of 10, it worked for him. And what happened? New Zealand rugby, because of that reason, have dominated world rugby since 1996, after we won the World Cup in 95.
But that's what people don't understand, what a brilliant player he was, because what people are seeing is the penalties he gave away and playing on the line. But because that makes a good player, both him and Sean
Absolutely.
You can manipulate the rules to suit you. And
that's the key. That's the key, isn't it? As you rightfully said, the key is to know the rules well enough that you can manipulate them in your favor, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but now also because of obviously these new regulations and speeding up the game, and maybe not that many people contest at the breakdown, so it obviously changes defensive structures a lot. So what did the defensive structures look like in your day? And maybe just explain to our listeners and our viewers what the defensive structures mean, how a team sets it up, and then how it's changed now, especially in this competition, and how us as South Africa might need to change our defensive structures moving forward. Because we're so used to having that rush defense, and there are going to be a lot of gaps in our defense if we don't adjust what we're doing.
Yeah, look, in my day, that was a long time ago. But basically, you would have what you call a push defense. So we would call it push, which is the equivalent of a rush, but it wouldn't be as aggressive. We would wait for the inside guy to push out first, and then the second and the third and go up
So you
systematically
kind
in
of
lines.
follow the attacking line like this, and then the players would push up as the attacking players would come forward.
The guy closest to the ruck would push off first, the guy next to him second, third, and so systematically get off the line.
Okay.
From static play. Then you used to have on a backline defense, you would either have a tackling a structure of inside out, where you would stay on the inside of the ball carrier's shoulder and pushing towards a touchline, or you would do an outside in defensive structure where you would force the guys to play back towards the forwards, so that your big loose forwards can smash them and create the turnovers and slow the game down. But also I've seen now that the rush defense that was successful for us in the World Cup, there's been very little of that in the New Zealand competition at the moment.
So just quickly before we move to the New Zealand competition, so what it means by the rush defense that the Springboks implemented in the World Cup last year is that Makazole Mapimpi, for instance, would completely break that defensive line completely out and kind of rush up to stop the ball from going out further to another player. It worked sometimes, but it didn't always work. And when it didn't work and when you timed it wrong, the possibility of the team scoring a try would be massive. Am I explaining it properly, James?
Yeah. So what you're saying is correct. The danger is it's tackling or defensive dummy 101. Okay.
Yeah.
So your last play, in other words, your winger or your fullback must never hit in. You must always must always stay on last man, and you must rely on the inside to ensure that inside guy is working hard enough for the guy that if he happens to cut back, that he can close that tackle up and force the guys and utilize the touch line as another defensive player, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you are quite right.
Yeah, so they broke that line and rushed up to stop that player from being able to go. But now there was a massive overlap on the outside. So like I said, if you timed it wrong, then you get it completely wrong. And Makazole Mapimpi did get it wrong a few times, and he did break the line and he did miss a few tackles. But when it works, it's a great way to stop the attacking team.
Absolutely, because you simply give them less time with ball in hand.
Yeah.
So you don't allow them opportunities with the short little offloads where guys run off the shoulder into the holes, etc. You smothering the ball immediately. So what you're doing is the more time the ball spends on the ground, the slower the game actually becomes, and the less attacking opportunities are created. So yes, the rush. In my opinion, there's a time and place for the rush defense, but I think that some of the old generation type defensive patterns still have a place in the modern game.
And I guess that's what New Zealand has been implementing now, because you didn't see a lot of that rush defense happening now. Because could it be because the players are so good at breaking the line, so you couldn't take that chance of allowing them any more gaps? Because if you look at the clean breaks and the meters and the carries that some of these players did, you can't give them that opportunity to really. You can't give them even like the smallest little gap. So do you think that had an impact on their defense structures now? And what did you realize differently to what New Zealand was doing in this competition?
Well, remember one thing, the ball will always beat the man. Okay. So if you're keeping the ball in the air, it's always going to be a lot more difficult to defend and realign your defense. So as I say, when the ball's on the ground, I can realign. We can come up with a different communication of how we're going to defend this. But when the ball is moving the whole time and players are playing towards the ball, it makes it very, very difficult. And if you look at, some of the stats on running meters, the guys are running 40, 50, sometimes almost up to 100 meters in a game with the ball. And that speaks a lot of how New Zealand rugby have now made the game a lot quicker, a lot more dynamic, and at the same time, with the implementation of the new law, or the stricter implementation of the existing laws.
Yeah. So, but also, do you think it's also a way to make the game a little bit safer? Because obviously, if you can't rush up like that, you can't do such hard tackles on the players anymore, because you kind of have to rather follow it. So there's been also a big thing around high tackles and head and neck injuries and all sorts of things now. So obviously that rush defense, when you just like slam into that player to tackle them, now you have to read the play a little bit better, and you can't rush up like that anymore. So it's not going to be that dangerous anymore. Do you think that will also have an impact on that?
Look, it's difficult to say, because remember, you train, you condition for impact. I think the more dangerous tackles and where the injuries occur from are the ones where you actually don't see them coming. If I'm lining a player up squarely in front of me, I know he's going to run straight at me, so I'm prepared for it. But it's when I don't see a player and he tackles me from the side, for example, or you get a swinging leg coming around, or somebody falling accidentally on top of you, I think that's where the injuries, or the more the risk of injuries coming from, as opposed to the actual front-on-front tackles. Yes, they are brutal. I agree with you, but the worst thing that can happen is butting of heads in terms of both players trying to go down.
Yeah, but the problem is not necessarily the ball carrier. The actual tackler gets more injured, and the numbers of tacklers getting injured is much more or much higher than the ball carrier. So the rush defense is also, taking away from that, and the high tackles and sharing headspace is not necessarily a way to just protect the ball carrier. It's a way to protect the tackler. I can't remember that exact percentage of the tackler, but I think it's more than 60% or 70% of the actual injuries that happen in a tackle is to the tackler, not the ball carrier. So we keep thinking we need to protect the ball carrier, but that's not necessarily why World Rugby wants to change the laws. It's actually to protect the tackler. So that for that high tackle, so you don't share head space, that's where a lot of that happens. So the tackler has to go lower. Obviously, a lot of the very serious injuries can happen to the ball carrier, like you said, when you don't expect that tackle to come, or when you do it.
Hang on. So, sorry, I have to disagree with you. They implemented the law for the tackler to start low enough so that if he does slip up, it's not a risk in terms of head-eye tackles or neck tackles or wrenches or that sort of stuff. But listen, rugby is a contact sport. So whether you are carrying the ball or whether you are a tackler, you're going to have the risk of injury. And if you look at the amount of tackles in the New Zealand competition, it's been astounding. I mean, some of the loose forwards have made up to 18 tackles a game. I mean, that is just unheard of. So then again, you might look back at it and assess it and say maybe that's why the injury list that we showed earlier is as high as it was. I mean, in some games there were.
That's why you have to make sure that the height of the tackle is lower, so that you can lower those amounts of injuries and head and neck injuries and concussions that happen. So remember, you can't just think of the one. Yes, it's a contact sport, but you can't just think of that one moment. And you have to think of the longevity of the players and what's going to happen to them after they start playing rugby. So I'm all for World Rugby trying to protect the tackler and the ball carrier. It's obviously not just one side.
Yes.
But so a lot of the law changes that they do make, if you look at the 50-22 rule, all of those things is to stop players from rushing up and slowing down the tackler so that they can have more control over what they're going to do in a tackle, to not just protect the ball carrier, but also to protect themselves. So defensive structures, I think, are going to change quite a lot over the next few years. because teams will have been able to, I think teams will be able to figure out how to get through the rush defense, so the defensive structures will have to change again.
Well, I think what that would also lead to, Woude, you're quite right. Apart from making the game eventually a lot safer, I think it will also make it a lot more creative, where guys are going to, instead of running at each other, they're going to start running angles and running different lines, running off each other's shoulders. So you're going to see a lot of the time more play time than what we've currently seen, where you have a lot of stoppage times with a lot of penalties. So as long as the players keep the ball in the air, then yes, that's also going to minimize or reduce the amount of injuries that are going to occur in the game. So hopefully it will make the game a lot more spectacular, a lot more gracious, and add a lot more entertainment value. And that's what for me is very, very important, is the entertainment value.
So I asked you to pick 3 players that added a lot of entertainment for you, and I asked you to pick 3 non-All Blacks, cap players, so players that haven't been capped for the All Blacks. So which 3 did you pick, and why did you pick them?
Well, I had to. My first one was Kurt Eklund, who's a hooker like myself. He showed exceptional consistency, not only in the line-out time, but in his overall performance, his ability to be a fourth loose forward, which is what a hooker's role should additionally be in the game. He played well towards the ball. He was at times one of the standout players. I think he won man of the match against the Chiefs. And if you look at the incumbent, not the incumbent, but if you look at Cody Taylor playing for the Crusaders and the weakness of their lineouts, for me, Kurt Eklund would be one of my choices.
Well, actually, I wonder, I would probably have rather gone for Asafo Amua if I had to pick a hooker, or James Parsons. I think they had a bigger impact on the game than Eklund did. I think when Dane Coles was injured, I think Asafo had such a great impact, and he's just stepped into the shoes, and the Hurricanes lineouts were actually pretty good. So it's interesting that you picked Eklund. I probably would have gone James Parsons if I had to pick a hooker.
Okay,
but that's just my option. Next one.
Next one was Lumape, who for me was who came from I think the National Rugby League. His footwork was exceptional. His ability to carry the ball on average in terms of running meters, and that's what you want from a player. His ability to get through players and beyond them, which allows front foot advantage, which is very important. So for me, although now he's injured, I think he's got a broken forearm. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he would be one of my second choices.
Yeah, he's really stood out for me. I really enjoyed watching him play. Defensively, I think he still needs to work on his tackling a little bit. I think defensively he hasn't been that great. So in that channel where he played, in that 12 channel, that's a very big thing that they need to focus on. But yeah, I mean, he's not a newcomer. He was supposed to be in the squad last year, but he didn't. In the World Cup squad last year, but he didn't make it. So it's not like he's a newcomer. It's just all of a sudden now he's coming through and he's showing what he can actually do. So he's definitely a great player for me. And when they played against the Crusaders, and he kind of just showed that Jack Goodyear's maybe not that good, what I saw maybe just in that specific game. But yeah, I can agree with you on that. He's really stood out also in this one. And the last one.
He has some shortcomings. He's not a great kicker. He's not very good under the high ball. But then again, does a midfielder really need to be a great kicker? No, he doesn't.
Well, it depends on the type of game you want to play. So.
And then
Okay.
I have to bring him up. I know he's played 3 tests, but for me, my namesake Dalton
Yeah.
was just absolutely.
But you're cheating. I'm sorry, you're cheating at the game.
Eh?
You're cheating at the game.
Okay, well, that's all. Okay. Or even okay, you know what? Even as a dark horse, Umaga Jensen,
Yeah.
as a dark horse for me.
Yeah.
He's also, I mean, he's the nephew of Tono Umaga, and he was also absolutely superb, sublime. When he got onto the field, he really, really impressed and lived up to that Umaga reputation.
Yeah.
So
my 3 players, so he's also one of my 3 players that I picked. So
Okay.
I actually put the stats up of the 3 players. So I went with Hoskin Sutotu. I think he has been one of the breakthrough 8s, and he's been so brilliant. And playing next to Dalton Papilia and Akiri Ione, I think they were probably some of the best back row in the competition, the 3 of them from the Blues. I went with Caleb Clark, and I also went with Peter Umaga Jensen. And exactly for these stats that we have up here. So Peter Umaga Jensen's only played 4 games. 4 games, I think, for the Hurricanes. So he didn't start right from the start. He's only 22 years old. And since he started playing, especially with Leomape and his inside, they were really brilliant together. And that center pair and that midfield pair was great. But when Leomape got injured, it felt to me like he got even better after that. And his line breaks has just been that his line running has just been so massively, massively impressive to me. I think he had 6 line breaks in 4 games. And
that is
what
correct,
what I like about him is that he never runs directly into a player. So it's very difficult, and you would probably be able to say better than me, but it must be very difficult to tackle and defend a player like that who doesn't run directly into you, because you don't know which side he's going to go to.
Well, you see, that's why when you choose centers, generally your 12, your inside center, needs to be the creator. He needs to create the gaps for the 13 on the outside. And when you're complementing each other, then that style of play, then those 2 players will either complement or not complement each other. You know, I always go back and you look at a Michael Du Plessis and a Donny Gerber. You know, that's generations ago. Yeah, but you need, that's it. You need that inside center to create the play, draw the players in towards him. Let the outside center actually also have to come in towards him to defend, and then lay off the shoulder for the outside center. Then obviously the wing and the fullback to come in and finish off with the scoring of the try.
Yeah. So so for me, Umaga Jensen's definitely the only problem that I have right now is, yes, you can see the tricks that he brings as a center, and he still needs to develop a lot of them, but the midfield is very saturated at the moment. So it's going to be very difficult for him to break into the All Blacks lineup or into the All Blacks team right now, because I think Rico Ione is probably the best 13 that All Blacks have at the moment. I went with Caleb Clark, 21-year-old, and I think he's had an absolute breakout Super Rugby sensation that he's been. I thought he was thriving. He's came from a sevens background. He still needs to choose if he's going to play in Tokyo next year. So that's obviously a big thing now that the Olympics got cancelled. He's probably going to have to make that choice, but it would be silly for him not to go next year. But he's big and he's strong. He's got pace. I mean, he had 231 meters made, which is just something else. And I think it's very exciting for me to watch the prospect of him turning into a great player, just like his dad was. And what I like about him also, he's not just kind of a one trick horse kind of thing. He doesn't just score on his pace. So I think it was the first game that they played against the Hurricanes that actually he scored the try with pace and stepping. And then when they played against the Highlanders, it was this pure power going to the line, because he is a strong guy. 107 kilograms. So I think I'm very excited to see how his career is going to take shape. And as a 21-year-old, I think you showed a lot of maturity already.
Well, isn't it quite scary that these players that we've nominated, how young they are and how good they are and how dynamic they are and versatile? I mean, the future for All Black rugby is certainly very, very bright. If you look at some of these names that we wouldn't even have thought of last year, all of a sudden are just absolute standout stars at the moment.
And then the other 21-year-old, Hoskins Sitotu, who's been brilliant at the back of that Blues pack. He's definitely been the standout player for the Blues. Unfortunately, he also got injured. But like I said before, that combination of him, Papili, and Ayoni was just deadly. And I think he's such a threat from the back of the scrum. He's strong. He's got great handling skills. I think he was some of the highest tackle rates, tackle counts, some of the highest carries, and some of the highest meters made in any of the games. So I think he's definitely a prime contender for that number 8 jersey, although I think that probably Adi Sevilla will probably wear that jersey for the next couple of years, but I think they're going to add him into the mix very soon.
It's quite interesting that in talking about the loose forwards, that we're not even mentioning Sam Cane at the moment.
Yeah, no, don't take me there.
Yeah,
it's going to be a long conversation.
It's quite interesting, the conversation we're having, and we're talking about the standout players. Yes, the guys that are not currently All Blacks, and we would possibly hope would become All Blacks for their sake, but that Sam Cane is not even been mentioned in this conversation is absolutely bizarre. I mean, if this was 2 years ago, you'd certainly be mentioning Richie McCaw and then 2 others.
Yeah. No, but I think just to wrap this up, I definitely think New Zealand rugby just proved that they have absolutely quality players. They've got just the way that they play rugby is just so innovative. It's just exciting, and they're definitely going to be a team to. I enjoyed watching this, and it's such a pity that it's coming to an end this weekend.
Yeah. Look, All Black rugby, New Zealand rugby, whichever you want to call it, is always remained very, very consistent. And the reason they're able to do that is that they're not scared to breed young talent. They're not scared to bring through young talent. And they reinvent themselves very, very quickly as opposed to other nations. And that's why you always find the South Africans or the Australians or whoever always trying to be like the New Zealanders or be like the All Blacks. So they are certainly the most adaptive and intelligent in reinventing the way rugby is played. And we've seen it. The competition's been amazing. The ball carries, the running meters, the line breaks, the physicality, and the amount of tackles made in any given game by the loose forwards, even by some of the hookers, which speaks volumes for the quality and the style of play that they've been able to reinvent post the World Cup.
On that note, I do know we have some questions, so let's go straight to them. Dave, what do you have for us? James, do you think rugby could pull off an over 50s tournament like cricket, and would you be game? That's from Greg Freeman.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. Well, if you look at Mike Tyson currently at 53 years old and all those clips of him sparring and hitting the bag, you would think that it would be possible. I just don't think that in rugby, in a contact sport, at the age of 50, that a body would be able to take the impact. I think the injuries would be long lasting and detrimental. So, I found even playing in my mid-40s, playing in the Cape Town Tens and that, the toll it took on my body. So
No, you should know. You're about 50 now.
Stop it. Be nice. So, yeah, I've actually always thought about it over 50s tournament, but I don't think it will be sustainable. I think the injuries and the hamstring pulls and the calf tears and the dislocated shoulders and that would be just unsurmountable. So it's a nice idea, because I think we'd all like after 50 to maybe get another payday.
So Senza Sateba says the tackler's rolling away rule is ridiculous. Sometimes it's not that easy when there is a heap of players on you in a ruck. Now they're also dictating in which direction they must roll. Please, hey.
I agree with you. Absolutely. You're a very wise man.
I think what also started happening, though, is that the players started realizing, especially the scrummers started realizing that if they just actually block their player a little bit more, or if they just put their knee on their player, they would also not be able to roll away and they would get a penalty in their favor. So they started, again, like we said, they started working around the current rules and how can they manipulate them. So the snippy little scrum halves definitely affected that also. What's next, Dave? James the Rig says, James, how do your rule changes affect your play on the field? Also, how often did you push the boundaries on the rules, knowing you might be conceding a penalty? Could you test some referees more?
Look, how do we say, we're creatures of habit. So once we start developing bad habits of pushing the boundaries on the field, and the rule changes are applied more strictly, you are certainly going to get caught out. So you're going to have to reinvent yourself. But I'm a man that believes you push the boundaries till you get caught, and then you stand back, and then you go again. And that is the advantage, what makes a good rugby player versus an average rugby player, is the player that interprets the laws in his favor to the benefit of not only himself, but primarily his team, but without being negative, in other words, where you give away unnecessary penalties out of being an absolute idiot and land up costing your team. You're
making yourself sound like an absolute angel on the field. It's rubbish. You pushed it all the time. How many people do you punch in a breakdown?
But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I was one of the smallest on the field, so I had to do as much as I can or could to get away with it. But I certainly pushed the boundaries all the time. And let me tell you something, a lot of the times I actually got away with it, believe it or not.
Jeez, imagine how many times you would have been banned from rugby. You probably would have been banned from rugby for life if they caught you for all of those things. Dave, what do we have next? Ferdy, as a biokineticist, can you explain how soccer players are able to get up and play after such brutal injuries that cause them to roll around for a full minute in pure agony? From the Rig. I don't think as a biokineticist, I should even answer that. I think it's my profession, it's absolute joke. But, so actually soccer players, I think the reason why they have to earn so much money is because they actually need to go for drama lessons and acting lessons.
They gyrate so much.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And I think probably one of their like training sessions in a week is to how to act and roll on the field and pretend like you saw. But I remember as part of my training, I had to be the ER person or whatever at a rugby game. So every time a person would get injured, we have to run on and like give them ice and give them water. And the one time I ran on and a guy says to me, he's like, "Oh, there's something in my eye." So I was like, do you seriously want me to put my finger in your eye? Here, have some water, get up and go play. So I would not have the sympathy and the empathy for soccer players whatsoever.
No, I must be honest, Woude, I agree with you that the way they gyrate and break dance is absolutely laughable. And then, funny enough, in my generation when we played, we would probably have the biggest head impacts and concussions, where you would get up and actually walk to the opposition's side of the field, and all that would fix was a bit of water over your head, and then off you go and you carried on playing. So it's quite interesting how the game has changed. But in terms of the soccer, it's laughable.
And you have more for us, James. 8 South Africans in the run on 15 for the Sale Sharks. Talk about home away from home. Census Atebe. Yeah, so I think tomorrow the Sale Sharks are taking on the Harlequins, actually. And we've got 8 South Africans. Robert de Preer starting at 10. Why they want to put their team through that whatsoever to have Robert de Preer in that side, I don't understand. He's proved at the Stormers that he could do nothing. Then he went to the Sharks. If it wasn't for Daddy, he would never have played. And now he goes there. And again, it doesn't make any sense to me.
You know what? I agree with you 110%.
I am excited to see players like Dan de Preer, and I don't like Faf, but he's in the team. I'm just going to roll my eyes at him because I don't like him. But I am excited about some of the other players. But no, don't understand why Robert de Preer is there.
Look, it's rather scary to see the mass exodus of players going abroad. And yes, you can understand it. It's about money. If you're a CEO and you're good working for a company and you get headhunted by another company for more money because you're good at what you do, yes, I'm all for it. Sport, it's sad to see our players leaving the volumes that they are, because we'd like to see those quality players or those type of players playing on South African soil, which also adds to the quality of our rugby, and obviously adds to the younger players learning from these guys and becoming superstars thereafter.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily mind our senior players leaving, because we get the opportunity to actually develop our youngsters in South Africa when we do that. And I think it happened here now. So use the money that you would have paid on a player like Peter Steph du Toit and use it to develop 3 youngsters. So that's just my opinion on that.
No, look, I agree with you, because yes, a lot of times you've found that unions will buy 3 hookers, for example.
Yeah.
And only one hooker can play at any given time, and the other one sits the majority on the bench, and then the third one could be applying his trade elsewhere, possibly being a number 1, let's say at the Lions. So yes, I agree with you. Develop players and don't overcrowd teams with too much depth in any particular position.
Dave, what is up next? Birdie and James, what do you think of Dylan Hartley? James, maybe you should take this one, because wasn't he a hooker?
He was a hooker, and in fact, a very good hooker.
Is that all you're going to say about him? Did you ever play against? You didn't play against him. He's too young for you.
No. Dylan Hartley, who did he play for again?
He played for the Northampton Saints and for England. No, wasn't he captain?
No, he was. Look. For me, Dylan Hartley, I don't know. I don't know. He never stood out for me as a number 1 hooker. If you had to nominate the top 5 hookers ever or not ever, but in England over the last 50 years, I wouldn't even nominate Dylan Hartley in the top 5.
Really? But he had such a great, decorated career.
Yeah. You know what? There are a lot of players that have played multiple and numerous test matches, but it doesn't make them legends, because now it's become a commercial game. You can play 5 minutes and earn a test cap. You can, yes, he was the captain of England, but I think I'll stick to my opinion on that.
Okay. Like I said, I think as a captain, he had an 85% winning rate with his team. And I think, didn't he have like 2 Six Nations, a Grand Slam? Also, so he had quite a good career. So maybe as a captain, he was very good.
Well, look, there's been a lot of great players that haven't won a World Cup. A Sean Fitzpatrick, a John Kerwin, a Philippe Sella, I think who else was there? But my point is, it doesn't mean that you've won trophies, that you are necessarily a standout player or icon or a legend, because you might have just played in a good generation of a good team at a particular period. So Dylan Hartley, like I say, one bird doesn't bring a summer. So yes, he won trophies, but I still wouldn't put him in the top 5.
James, we've got one more question coming up from Census Atebe. We are always playing catch up to the New Zealanders. I mean, look, when Sonny Bill Williams hit rugby union, he changed the game. Then everybody wanted to start offloading in the tackle. James, you mentioned this before, and you said how they are reinventing the game consistently, and you played against them, so you experienced that firsthand.
Again, as I say, they are intelligent. There's one thing about being strong and being fit and being conditioned and being physical, but you have to reinvent the way you play the game, because what happens is your opponents start working out what your strengths and your weaknesses are. So I'll give an example, and I've always said this. If you remember a player by the name of Gavin Johnson, when he joined the Lions, or then the Transvaal, I mean, the first 2 seasons, he was absolutely standout because he attacked from the back, and nobody ever expected fullbacks those days to run the ball from the back. And eventually he went from Magic Johnson to Tragic Johnson. So again, yes, the New Zealanders are the leaders. We've got to accept that they do have the ability to reinvent themselves. But more importantly, what I want to say and sum up is that they work together. They don't fight against each other in their coaching structures. For them, it's not, excuse my language, it's not a pissing contest. There it's about what is the best for New Zealand rugby, and their super teams to remain the best, remain competitive, and be successful. And that is why they've dominated world rugby for as long as they have, for that exact reason. And that is what we need to learn in South Africa. There's no I in team, and we need to learn to start working together as opposed to trying to outshine the other one.
Okay, after that motivational speech, thank you very much, James. And thank you again for being on the show today. We've got some questions for Mbolelo coming up from the rig. MKT, do you have any great life metaphors for Messi or Ronaldo's story?
Absolutely. Do I have? Hey, James, good stuff. And good
How's
stuff.
That,
great
that?
stuff. How you, James? Really thought a little bit more. You played interesting. Great. Okay. That one's an interesting one. Let me see what I can do about it. I think. Let me see what I can do about answering that. I will.
Ah, we've lost Mbolelo, and we're going to need another rugby question. Oh, I thought I was rid of James now. I'm tired of seeing his face.
Yeah,
Okay, what do we have for me, James?
I'm tired of looking at that bike behind you.
So, James, the
I want to
rig
come
said-
there, just get on it and ride it.
Yeah, exactly. I hope he's talking about the bike. James, do you think playing every weekend is acceptable in rugby? How long could you sustain it for?
Yeah, I don't see that it's a problem if you're rugby scientific now. So you have physiotherapy sessions, you have ice bars, which allows you to recover quicker. You have supplementation, you have conditioning in terms of weight training. You the guys are
so you can do your rehab properly.
100%. So the game is scientific, and I think yes, dependent on age, yes, playing every weekend is not a problem. We never, and I have to say, I hate talking about myself as an old generation, but playing week in and week out was never a problem. It was never a problem. I mean, you look at the footballers; they play twice a week. And they managed to shoot the lights.
Football with
No,
rugby, right?
but what I'm saying is, forget, yes, there is contact relative. But if you go look at the amount of kilometers that a footballer runs in a game, and he does that twice a week, and you look at a rugby player, there's 80 minutes of play, and you may be only playing 60 minutes. And sometimes as a single player, you're only making 3 tackles or 5 tackles a game. What do you tell me? You can't play the next weekend then?
I think it's got a lot to do also with the conditioning before the time. Did you have enough time to do that? Yeah. Okay, Craig Freeman says, are players getting too soft and protected? The breakdown has become touch rugby. Is that what we want to watch?
I think what we ultimately want to watch is a fair contest. Okay. So you don't want to watch players that are obstructive, where they intentionally and willfully obstruct the game and the flow of the game to make it a spectacle or a good spectacle for crowds to watch. I do think that the breakdown law, obviously coming from the side, is unacceptable. But I also do believe that if a player is quick enough and intelligent enough to be able to manage and run the shorter line to get to the ball quicker, then it should be first come, first serve, in my way, in my opinion. But yes, the game has eventually, it did get to a point where it was being slowed down, and it wasn't entertaining. So I don't think it's necessarily a comparison of being soft or protected.
I think what I'll say is that I think players are being very coddled at the moment so that they can have longer careers. So that's what you're saying. We're talking about squad rotations. We're talking about players taking sabbaticals. We're talking about players doing all of these things. So I think players are being more coddled in that sense. And like some of the very, very top players are kind of put in cotton wool. Richie McCaw was exactly the same, and that's why we were able to have get such a long career out of him. That's why we're still able to play at 34 at that level. So I think actually players are getting very hard, and that's like bigger and stronger because of all the conditioning, because of all the scientific things around it. So I don't think players are getting stuffed. I think the game is just getting so much harder, and that's why they need to change some of the rules to be able to make sure that you don't get that many injuries, one, and two, to think of the longevity of the game. Because if parents see how injured rugby players get week in, week out, they're not going to let their kids play rugby. So you have to think about changing rules to make it safer so that people will still play rugby.
No, I absolutely agree with you. For any parent, that is a concern, and especially for a lot of moms. A lot of moms just say unequivocally, I will not let my son play rugby. It's too dangerous. But, you know, it's like when you get in a car when you're young and you watch your mom or dad drive and you think, geez, today, how am I ever going to be able to drive? Now all of a sudden you get in a car and you don't even think twice, So what it is conditioning and experience. And at the end of the day, we want the game to be entertainment. And I always come back to that. You want entertainment value, but in the right manner. And you also have to have the luxury of quality of players to be able to rest some of your stars. And I think that's also what's made these current super competitions, sorry, maybe I'm digressing a bit, made it less appetizing, is because there's so many teams with so few stars and they spread out all over the place, and people are not really seeing the value of going to watch a rugby game against, say, the Bulls and the Lions, for example, as opposed to what you're seeing in New Zealand at the moment.
Dave, do you have anything more for us? Okay, we are going to, Mbolelo, here we go. Do you have any great life metaphors for Messi, Ronaldo's story?
I think I do. Once again, great stuff to both of you. James and Woude, awesome stuff. That was a great way to wrap up the season, and great to have James and Woude having a go at each other. I think you guys made some great points. I think, you know what, having Leo Messi is really like having the one you marry, right? Is Leo Messi is good for everybody. And how he's shown that is he lost Xavi, he lost Iniesta, he had to move on with Busquets, he lost Valdez. So he lost that La Masia core, and he still carried on, and he's shown that he can evolve. Cristiano Ronaldo is more like the supermodel that you take to the pub on the weekend, to the bar on the weekends, just so everybody can see what you've got. And how I know that is he's never really stayed at a club long enough to evolve to the next generation. Is at Man United, he had his 6 years with that tremendous team under Vidic, Ferdinand, etc. Moved on. Real Madrid had his team, Ramos and the gang. They went on, they brought Bale in, and then he went to another level. Couldn't win without Bale. So Ronaldo is good for him more often than not, and Messi is good for everyone more often than not. And that's been proven by his ability, I think, to go more. So I'd say Messi is the wife. Cristiano Ronaldo is the supermodel who you have either as your girlfriend or the girl on the side. That is what I would say. Senzo Sitebe says Mbappe is the alpha dog at PSG. That last night you saw it. Against Atalanta, Neymar couldn't bring them home. Atalanta, are you kidding me? This isn't Fergie's United. This isn't Barcelona under Pep. And he just couldn't do it. Clearly Mbappe is the guy. What you might say is that, fair enough, Neymar is what? He's the key. Mbappe is the engine. Right? You can always hotwire a car. You don't really need a key. But you cannot go without an engine, and Mbappe is that. The Rig says, why are you not saying Neymar is soft? He is a marshmallow. All right, you know what? I like marshmallows. I'm not in love with Neymar, so don't know. That's probably why I didn't use that one there. I really like marshmallows, actually. But no marshmallows on like tea or hot chocolate. That's amateur games. I'm not going to play that one. No good. Jesse Randallhoff says, Ozil has an amazing PR game. He said the club can't force him out. What do you think about player power? Is it good or bad for the game? I think it's excellent. For far too long, clubs, right, have gotten away with paying players far too little for what they give. And also, listen, a club and an owner's time, by the way, is forever. A club and an owner's time is forever. A player's window in football is 6 to 8 years. Make as much money as you can. And quite frankly, you're the product. I know people always say, oh, the fans are the most important. Get the hell out of here with that. There's lots of people who can sing and shout and get boozed. Footballers are unique, no matter what sport you're in. You're the product. For a long time, it's players, you're lucky to be at the club. Now the players are starting to realize, you're lucky to have me. These guys, the number in the Premier League is 0.017%. make it into a first-team Premier League team. That's how rare that type of talent is. And the players now realize is we will have our social media, right? So the media can't have the narrative on I'm a bad guy. And this might have worked for James back in the day, is you only ever got the story. If a reporter didn't like you, that was the story on you. So I love it. I absolutely love the player power thing. The Ozil thing, though, is he needs to be careful because in life, there's one simple rule. Be who you can afford to be. And Mesut Ozil can't talk like this because he hasn't delivered on Leo Messi numbers. He's not Cristiano Ronaldo. Is if you deliver on that level, if you're James Dalton, if you're John Smith, if you're Juan Smith, and you go to the World Cup final, talk all you want. Talk all you want. You're Mike Catt. You go to the final. Nobody likes Mike Catt. He's a World Cup winner. He doesn't care what you got to say. He could not care less what you got to say. He's unbearable, right? But he's going to talk. So be the person you can afford to be. Mesut Ozil, I'm afraid, especially with Arsenal fans, you've been a disaster. So if I was him, I'd shut the hell up. I don't care what's going on in the background. You've been awful on the field. I don't care what's happening in the background, to be quite frank with you, is shut the hell up, play football, or get out of here. So I think it's with Ozil, it's been a disaster. Be you can afford to be in life. If you're talented, talk more. Do whatever you want. Right? That's not a new rule. That's not exceptional. In life, we all give. If you're better looking, people are nicer to you, right? If you're smarter, we pay you more. That's just the way the world works. Stop talking about fairness. There's no fairness on planet Earth. You're smarter, you're better looking, we're nicer to you, we'll give you more chances. Mesut Ozil, You know what Mesut Ozil's like? He's the supermodel who's like 45 now. You're on the slide. The 21-year-olds are ready to come in, and he just can't let go. So the Ozil thing's a disaster, an absolute shambles. Folks, for tonight, I thought that was awesome. We'll finish off on this question. Senzo Sitebe saying Neymar hasn't done anything for PSG except boost their commercial appeal. You know what, for me, I'm always, and I will always say this, I take it in my personal life, I take it in professional life. Especially all I know is sport. I don't know anything else. Production versus tolerance, I can't say it enough. Neymar and Pogba, my two things is I have to tolerate more than you produce. That's my problem with Neymar. Win me a World Cup with Brazil, go samba dance all you want. Go have all the social media you want. But when you haven't produced, self-awareness. What does it say about you when you're Neymar? You're all over the place. There's videos of you with models in hotels, and then you're not winning your Champions League titles. The Selecao, you can't return us to winning the World Cup since 2002. It's just not good enough. You got Douglas Costa with you. You had Robinho in the beginning. You had these guys, Casemiro, Dani Alves. I don't want to go through the list again. So it's a lack of self-awareness. He's a commercial guy, good for PSG. But for me as a football fan who loves the game, too much fluff. I don't care about the cream at the top. I like the coffee. Give me the coffee because that's where the buzz is. Neymar, all fluff, no coffee. That's it for tonight, folks. That is it for tonight. Go and enjoy the Champions League to James and Woude. Magnificent tonight. Cannot wait. 2 weeks' time, we'll have James back again. Ladies and gentlemen, you could have been anywhere tonight. You've chosen to be with us. Big Shop Media, CliffCentral, changing the landscape. Absolutely brilliant. The Skip Pass. Share and like. Folks, be a friend, tell a friend. Tell them James Dalton, Woude Muller, the best rugby show on planet Earth. Absolutely love that. Be a friend, tell a friend. Cannot wait to see you tomorrow. Let's finish the week strong, ladies and gentlemen. For tonight, it has been a different ball game.